But when both houses do come back in a couple of weeks, the one thing they'll be under pressure to deal with, to finalise during that sitting fortnight, is going to be the same-sex marriage legislation. That's assuming the postal survey comes back on Wednesday of this week with a yes vote. Now, exactly what they'll be passing remains unclear. Most same-sex marriage supporters in the Parliament have indicated they're willing to support the Dean Smith bill, which allows religious marriage celebrants to decline service to gay couples. But now there's another bill being put forward with much broader religious exemptions. It's being put forward by Liberal Senator James Paterson. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. So what does your bill do that Dean Smith's bill won't?
Firstly, David, it's good to be with you, but I'm just exhausted having listened to your summary of the events of the day, let alone experiencing them.
Yeah, I know.
But look, but to the issue at hand, what my bill does, it provides broader religious freedom, freedom of conscience and freedom of speech protections than Dean Smith's bill does. I think Dean Smith's bill does have some things to commend it, and he's a really valued colleague and someone I respect. But my view is that the religious freedom protections in his bill are too narrow. So they basically only go to people who are religious ministers from whatever faith and the organisations they're from. It doesn't extend to the congregation who sit in their churches, and it doesn't extend to people who have the same views but have them for secular reasons. So my view is that these human rights of freedom of conscience, freedom of speech and freedom of religion are universal. They're not dependent on your profession, so everyone should share in them equally.
OK, so in practice then, what does that mean? Could a hotel refuse to let a room to a same-sex couple?
No. So there is a clause for conscientious objection, and it can only be exercised in relation to a wedding ceremony or reception. So it's not a carte blanche. It's not a get-out-of-jail-free card for anything.
But a hotel could say no to a wedding reception in
yes,
their,
they could.
in their hotel.
You could not force a hotel to host a wedding that went against the beliefs of the proprietor of the hotel.
And what if the hotel has no problem but the receptionist does?
The staff member,
who takes the booking.
It's up to the proprietor of the hotel to decide. I mean, if they don't feel they can work on that night, that's something for the hotel to manage. But they don't exercise veto rights over their whole employer and the whole organisation.
What if the married couple say they're just having a party?
And it subsequently turns out to be a
wedding. Then they're just saying we just like to have a party on the.
Well, they can't say no if the booking's for a party. They can't say no, nor should they be able to.
And if then they get up and say we're really happy we got married today.
Oh, look, I mean, David, I suspect these things aren't going to happen. I hope they don't happen.
Well, no, but this is a valid question. I mean, you know, you're saying there should be a ban on if it's a wedding reception, but not if it's a gay couple's party. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
All right, and then. Well, you could, as I say, have people book in a party and it turns into a wedding reception?
All laws, David, are subject to people attempting to get around them and deceive them. We can't legislate for every possible instance like that.
And what about the florist and the baker? You're saying they would be able to deny service to a gay wedding, but not if you're buying a cake or a bunch of flowers as a gay couple.
Right. And in fact, there's a really sad case from the United States on this in Washington State when same-sex marriage was legalised. There was a florist who had a gay couple as clients for 9 years very happily and never refused them to service and had quite a good relationship by reports. But then the law had changed to get married. They wanted to get her to cater their wedding, which is a lovely thing, and you would think that she would like to provide it, but she had a conscientious objection. She said she couldn't. They sued her and she's been fined, and it's still walking its way through the appeals process.
But again, getting back to
I don't want to see that happen.
No, and getting back to the technical point here, though, someone could certainly go and buy a bunch of flowers, 100 flowers from a florist, but if they don't tell them it's for a wedding, that's okay.
Of course, yeah. I mean, it's not up to the florist to dictate if they're just selling you flowers what you use them for. But if you're asking that florist, I want you to come to my wedding, distribute the flowers, set it up. It's for my wedding. It's going to be a same-sex wedding.
You want them to be able to say no.
I think they should be able to say no.
You're not a believer yourself. You're agnostic,
yes,
as you've written today, but you believe in religious liberty. Does that extend to the Muslim faith?
Yes.
You want so a Muslim limo driver could say no to a gay couple at their wedding.
Yes.
Would you say that an Islamic school should be able to discriminate what it teaches based on religious liberty as well in its schools?
Yes. So they already have those freedoms. Those schools have them today.
Okay. So they could teach, for example, that homosexuality is evil.
Well, I mean, that's a really extreme example. I would hope.
Well, I don't know if it's certainly the view of some more conservative Muslim believers.
Yeah, I would hope that no one is teaching that homosexuality
under what you're talking
about
here. Would that be allowed?
The question is, should it be lawful or not? I mean, the truth is, it is lawful for an imam to stand up in front of their mosque and say those things, and they do sometimes say those things. I don't see why a Muslim teacher in a Muslim school should have any less freedom to say that.
So an Islamic teacher would be able to say homosexuality is evil, teach the kids that, and that would be okay?
Well, I wouldn't welcome it, to be clear, David.
No,
but
under what you're proposing. Under what you're proposing.
I don't want it to be unlawful to do that, no.
Why not?
Because religious freedom is one of the cornerstone liberties of living in a free society. As you know, I'm agnostic, but I strongly defend other people's rights to live their life according to their values, and that includes educating your children consistent with your values. Now, there's obviously limits to that. You can't incite hatred, you can't incite violence, you can't do anything that's threatening or harassing. There are other laws which deal with that, and this bill would not prevent those laws from being
But you're saying that religious liberty should outweigh the discrimination against homosexual Australians?
Not in all instances. I'm saying specific to wedding and the teaching about marriage, it should. So these rights clash, and it is difficult to reconcile these rights when they do clash.
What if, for example, Islamic baker, or indeed a Catholic baker, has an issue with an interfaith marriage, that they don't believe, for example, a Muslim should marry a Christian? Can they deny service?
No, not under this bill. And
but that's their religious liberty, isn't it?
The reason why it's not in there is because I've never heard anyone seriously requesting that on their own behalf. Some people point that out as what they perceive to be an inconsistency.
Well, what about a Catholic priest who won't marry a non-Catholic?
They currently have the right to do that. They currently have the right to decline to do that. A Catholic priest can decline to marry a divorced person if they wish, under current marriage law.
Well, indeed. So they can already choose who they do and don't marry. Yes. So there is a discrimination there based on religious grounds.
Yes.
And you're saying that should extend to grounds of sexuality as well?
Well, I mean, it doesn't need to change in a material way for priests, and every bill has been pretty similar on that. Everyone agrees that priests should be protected. Where my bill differs from others is I want to extend that to other people, not just people whose profession it is to be a priest.
But should then, on religious grounds, a baker or florist, the people you're wanting to protect, be able to discriminate on the grounds of an interfaith marriage?
No. No, I'm not proposing that, and I just haven't encountered anyone who's requesting that. And it's
why not? Isn't that consistent with religious liberty?
Well, no one's asking me for it. This is a practical bill trying to address a practical problem. We're going to have the results of the postal survey on Wednesday. My guess is 30 to 40% of people are going to vote no. Those people are our fellow Australians. They have a sincere belief in marriage as a particular definition. They should be able to live their life according to those beliefs.
You also want to protect parents who are worried about what their kids are being taught, like the Safe Schools program, etc. So what would happen there? You'd be able to pull your kid out of class if you're not comfortable on religious grounds with what they're being taught.
Yeah, so this tries to import in a principle of international law, particularly the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which says that parents have a right to control the religious and moral education of their children, and they should therefore have a right, if they're being taught things that are inconsistent with those values, to have basically an opt-out clause, so they don't have to attend that class.
And does that extend to if you don't believe in evolution, you can pull your kid out of class?
No, this bill is just specific on marriage as the issue.
Why is that, though? If it's about religious liberty, surely you should be able to pluck your kid out of class if you religiously object to what's being taught.
I understand
why are you specifically targeting same-sex issues?
I understand where you're coming from, David, but no one has come to me and said, I want to take my kid out of a science class. There's no community demand for that, but a significant minority of Australians do believe in the traditional definition of marriage.
This is a popularity question.
Well, it's not a popularity question. It's what's going to happen. We're trying to deal with a practical potential problem here if the law changes on marriage. As you know, I want the law to change on marriage. I want gay couples to be able to marry, but I don't want other people to be affected by that adversely or to feel that they're going to be affected by that adversely. And I think this provision will give them reassurance that even if the law changes on marriage, they don't have to fear about what their children are going to be taught in schools because they're going to have some control over it.
Do you accept, though, that you are talking about a level of discrimination against same-sex couples that doesn't exist when it comes to racial or other areas of discrimination?
Yes, I do accept it's different.
So this is a form of discrimination?
Well, I mean, I don't see it quite that way, but I accept that people will categorise it that way. I mean, what we're doing if we don't address this is we're denying people's religious liberty, their freedom of conscience, their freedom of speech, their human rights too. And we have to choose sometimes when there's human rights clash. So we're making a conscious choice either to say the right to non-discrimination is the most important thing and I want to uphold that at the expense of other things, or we're going to uphold these other rights, or we have to find a way to balance. What I'm trying to do is find a balance. I don't want it to be a carte blanche. You can't discriminate against gay people in every aspect of life, but I don't think you should be compelled to participate in a wedding against your values.
We'll have to leave it there. James Paterson, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. We're going to take